I stepped into the banquet hall, bathed in dazzling lights, where everything exuded such opulence that it bordered on ostentation. The crystal chandeliers reflected golden light onto the soft silk tablecloths, while the elegantly dressed guests raised their champagne glasses with pride. This was not a place I ever thought I would set foot in, not a place for someone who had been cast aside by her own family. But here I was, at the lavish wedding of Sophia, my younger sister. The very person who, 12 years ago, had watched me walk out of our home with cold, unfeeling eyes, without a hint of hesitation. I was not on the guest list. Of course not. Someone who had been erased from the family at 18 had no reason to show up at this perfectly curated event. But fate has a way of playing cruel jokes, and tonight was the moment I had been waiting for over a decade. Walking among the powerful and privileged, I could feel the stares burning into me, the whispers rippling through the air like waves. Naturally, I was no longer that quiet, invisible girl who silently endured their contempt. At that moment, a voice laced with disdain cut through the elegant atmosphere. "What is this, Catherine?" I turned my head and met the sharp gaze of my mother, Margaret, a woman who had never once shown me affection. She smirked, lifting her glass of champagne with a smug expression. "What is that useless girl doing here?" I kept my smile intact. It had been a long time since I had last heard her speak about me, and yet her voice still carried the same dismissive disgust, as if I were an unwanted stain on her perfect life. Sophia stood beside my mother, arms crossed, lips curling into a mocking smirk. Her extravagant wedding gown made her look like the perfect princess in everyone's eyes, but I knew the truth about Sophia. "You're not on the guest list," she said haughtily, loud enough for those nearby to stop and turn toward us. But before anyone could react, another voice rang out, this time filled with shock and a trace of fear. "Wait, she's..." The one who spoke was Daniel, Sophia's fiancé. His face suddenly turned pale, his eyes widening as he looked at me like he had just seen a ghost from the past. I raised an eyebrow, stepping toward him slowly, my heels clicking against the polished marble floor. "Do you really not know anything, Daniel?" My voice was soft, but the weight of my words was undeniable. The room fell into a sudden, heavy silence. Sophia furrowed her brows, glancing at her fiancé, as if sensing something was terribly wrong. I did not rush. I simply stood there, letting the silence stretch, allowing their gazes to remain fixated on me, waiting for everything to begin unraveling. Just as the flawless wedding Sophia had meticulously crafted was about to shatter. Daniel took a step back, his complexion visibly paling. I remained still, quietly observing the reactions of my family, the very people who had once turned their backs on me without hesitation. A part of me wanted to savor this moment longer, but I wasn't in a hurry. Because before they could fully comprehend what was happening, I wanted them to remember the night that had changed my life forever. 12 years ago, I stood at my front door, the biting cold of a New York winter night cutting through me like a blade. Snowflakes drifted silently, covering the streets in a pristine white layer that starkly contrasted with the darkness weighing down my heart. My old, battered suitcase rested at my feet, holding only a few pieces of clothing and the small belongings I had managed to grab. The door slammed shut behind me without hesitation. I remembered my mother's final words, not spoken in anger nor sorrow, but with chilling indifference. "You are worthless to this family. I've put up with you long enough." And my father? He said very little. He simply stood there, arms crossed, allowing my mother to make the decision, just like always. And Sophia, just 17 at the time, stood with her arms folded, smirking like she had just won a battle she had been waging for years. No tears, no last-minute pleas, only the freezing wind hitting my face as I stepped away from that door. A door I knew I would never be allowed to walk through again. I wandered the streets with no idea where to go, no money, no close friends I could turn to, and no one from my family called to check if I was even still alive. I curled up in the corner of an alley next to a small diner in Brooklyn, where the warmth from the kitchen vents kept me from freezing. The first night, I prayed for morning to come quickly. By the second night, I began to understand that if I didn't do something, I wouldn't survive this winter. The next morning, just as I was about to leave in search of a better place to stay, the diner's back door swung open. A middle-aged woman with graying hair tied into a tight bun stepped out. Rita, the owner of the diner. She looked at me with narrowed, calculating eyes. "If you're planning on staying here all night, at least make yourself useful." I looked up, surprised. She didn't ask why I was there. She didn't show pity. She simply tossed me a rag. "Get in the kitchen and clean up. You can eat when you're done." I didn't hesitate. I had no right to refuse. From that day on, I did every job in the diner: cleaning, serving, washing dishes, whatever Rita asked of me. I slept in a small storage room behind the kitchen, surrounded by sacks of flour and boxes of supplies. It wasn't comfortable, but at least it had a roof, an old mattress, and, most importantly, it held a sliver of hope. Every night I studied by the dim light in the storage room. I refused to let my life revolve around this kitchen forever. I wanted more. I applied for a scholarship to a business school. I knew the chances were slim, but I had nothing to lose. A few months later, when I received my acceptance letter, I collapsed onto the diner's kitchen floor and cried. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was on the right path. The college years passed in a blur of early morning classes, late night shifts, and countless sleepless nights spent studying. But by the time I graduated, I knew everything had changed. I was no longer the abandoned girl wandering the winter streets. I had become someone they could never have imagined. At 27, I founded my own nutrition company, Catherine Health, a brand specializing in clean supplements and functional foods. I understood the struggles of those who had once been hungry, who had counted every cent just to afford a meal. And that understanding was what fueled my company's success. Within just 5 years, Catherine Health expanded across dozens of states in the U.S. My products filled the shelves of major retailers, were recommended by doctors, and even appeared in business magazines. And yet, in all those years, not a single person from my family reached out. No messages, no calls, not even a fleeting inquiry about whether I was alive. I had become a stranger to them, and that was perfectly fine. Or at least, I thought so. Back at Sophia's wedding, I looked at Daniel, her fiancé, and let a slow smile spread across my face. "You know who I am, don't you?" I asked, my voice light as air. Daniel didn't answer, but I saw it in his eyes, the hesitation, the fear. He knew, and that meant I had not been forgotten. The only problem was, they were never prepared to see me again. Daniel still hadn't spoken, but his face said it all. The entire ballroom was now focused on me, their eyes filled with curiosity and unease. I could sense Sophia's pulse quicken as she glanced at her fiancé, then back at me, her lips pressing into a tight line. I remained composed. In a deep blue evening gown that hugged my frame perfectly, my hair swept up in an elegant bun, I was nothing like the girl they had cast aside years ago. I could see them struggling to process it, trying to understand how Catherine, the worthless daughter they abandoned, could stand before them with such poise and authority. "Daniel," I spoke slowly, locking eyes with him. "You know who I am, don't you?" Daniel swallowed hard, his grip tightening around his wineglass until his knuckles turned white. He barely had time to react before Sophia stepped forward, inserting herself between us, her voice sharp and cold. "Why are you here?" she hissed, trying to regain control. "Are you here to beg for forgiveness? Or to steal attention on my big day?" I smiled, a sharp, deliberate smile. "Forgiveness?" I tilted my head. "I think you're mistaken, Sophia." I met her arrogant gaze, letting her see exactly what she had failed to notice all these years. I was no longer the abandoned child they had discarded. There was nothing to beg for. I had come to show them the truth they had worked so hard to bury. "Catherine?" A steady voice called my name from behind. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Ethan, my husband, stepped beside me, placing a firm yet gentle hand on my back, a silent declaration. No theatrics, no unnecessary words. Just his presence alone was enough for everyone to sense the power and success I carried with me now. Ethan was a highly accomplished businessman, the man I had built my life with over the years. But more than that, he was the only person who had witnessed every effort, every pain, and every moment of growth that had led me to this point. And now he stood beside me, a quiet statement that I was no longer someone to be dismissed. Sophia rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Oh, so you found someone stupid enough to believe in you? How pathetic." She lifted her chin, her mocking gaze sweeping over Ethan, but I saw the flicker of unease in her eyes. "You think just because you married some rich guy, you're suddenly on my level." I blinked slowly, keeping my voice composed. "On your level, Sophia?" I let out a quiet chuckle. "If I remember correctly, you're the one who built a perfect little lie to deceive everyone here, aren't you?" I saw her expression darken. "What are you talking about?" I calmly reached into my clutch, pulling out a neatly folded document. I held it up, steady and deliberate. "This is your academic record from medical school," I said, my tone as light as ever, but each word struck her like a knife. "Or rather, the proof that you were expelled in your second year." A heavy silence fell over the ballroom. Sophia froze. For a split second, pure panic flashed across her face before she quickly masked it. "You're lying." "Am I?" I shrugged, turning to Daniel. "If you don't believe me, feel free to check for yourself. Surely you wouldn't want to marry someone who doesn't even have a legitimate degree, right?" Daniel stiffened. It was clear this was the first time he was hearing any of this. "Sophia?" His voice was hoarse, filled with doubt. "Tell me she's lying." Sophia whipped around, snapping at him. "Of course she is. Don't listen to her." But it was too late. The sheer panic in her eyes had already exposed the truth. And I wasn't finished yet. "Not only did you lie about graduating," I continued, my voice eerily calm, "but you also deceived the medical system, your patients, and even your own fiancé." Daniel's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" I slowly placed another document on the table. "Your medical license, Sophia, or should I say, your fake medical license." This time, the murmurs in the crowd erupted into full-blown whispers. I could see Dr. Matthews, a renowned physician and someone my family once boasted about knowing, standing at a distance, his face a mask of shock. Daniel slowly picked up the paper, skimmed through it, then abruptly looked at Sophia with disappointment. "You forged documents to pretend to be a doctor?" Sophia opened her mouth, but no words came out, because she knew. She had lost. And I knew this show was just beginning. Daniel stared at the paper in his hands, the trust he once had for Sophia now replaced with doubt and disillusionment. The entire ballroom was drowning in heavy silence, broken only by the growing whispers of the guests. They were beginning to realize that the grand wedding they were attending was not a fairy tale, but a disaster about to explode before their eyes. Sophia tried to regain her composure, but I could see her hands trembling. "You think a meaningless piece of paper like this can ruin me?" Her voice was defiant, but the tension in her eyes betrayed her. "Daniel, don't believe her. She's just trying to stir up drama." Daniel slowly shook his head. "But you never told me about this, Sophia. If it's all a lie, why do you look so nervous?" Sophia opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't give her the chance. I slowly reached into my clutch and pulled out a small USB, holding it up for everyone in the ballroom to see. "Sophia, did you really think all I had was a single document?" I smiled, but there was no warmth in my eyes. "No, I came prepared for much more than that." The entire room fell silent. I could see Margaret, my mother, clutching her champagne glass so tightly that her fingers turned pale. Richard, my father, sat motionless at the table, his jaw clenched, a clear sign that he knew what was coming. I turned to Daniel. "Do you have a laptop here?" Daniel looked up, blinking a few times as if trying to process everything happening around him. Finally, he nodded. "Yes, over at the sound booth." I turned on my heel, walking slowly toward the DJ's station where a laptop rested on the control panel. I didn't need to say a word. Daniel followed me, as if some part of him already knew that something far worse was coming. Sophia panicked. Daniel stopped, but it was too late. Daniel took the USB from my hand and plugged it into the laptop. The large projector screen behind the stage lit up. Files began appearing one by one. I pressed a key and document after document opened. Financial records, bank statements, undeniable proof of money being funneled into untraceable accounts. And then the insurance records from Morelli Family Care Clinic, the very clinic my family had been running for over a decade. I turned back to my father. Dad, did you really think no one would uncover your fraudulent medical claims? The entire room turned to look at Richard. He gripped the armrests of his chair, his face pale as a sheet. You don't know what you're talking about, Catherine. His voice was unsteady, but I wasn't going to let him manipulate his way out of this. I pressed another key and the screen displayed a financial report. Clear evidence that my father had been using my identity to evade taxes for over a decade. The ballroom erupted in gasps. Some guests shook their heads in disbelief, others exchanged wary glances. I looked at my father, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. You used my social security number to file fake income reports, create fraudulent tax deductions, and launder money through your clinic, I said, pausing for a moment before tilting my head. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Margaret shot up from her seat. You're lying. No one will believe you. I didn't even look at her. Instead, I turned back to Daniel. This isn't just some minor financial scandal, I said. If you look closely, you'll see that Sophia's involved too. She stole another intern's identity to issue prescriptions and collect insurance payouts. Daniel didn't say a word. He turned to Sophia, his face filled with pain. You lied to me about all of this? His voice was hoarse. Sophia frantically shook her head. No, it's all lies. I let out a quiet chuckle. If you're so sure, then why don't you explain what's on that screen? Sophia trembled. Daniel looked at her for a long moment, then slowly reached for his ring finger. I was ready to spend my entire life protecting you, he said bitterly. But it turns out the woman I was about to marry is nothing but a fraud. He pulled off his wedding ring and threw it to the floor. The sharp sound of metal hitting marble echoed through the silent ballroom. Sophia gasped, stumbling backward as if she was about to collapse. But no one cared anymore. The crowd had already begun murmuring, some guests discreetly leaving their tables while others exchanged knowing glances. I took a step back, watching as everything Sophia had built crumbled right in front of her. Sophia stood frozen in the middle of the ballroom. Her engagement ring lay abandoned at her feet, reflecting the golden light of the chandelier above. But no one picked it up. Tears welled in her eyes, but no one cared anymore. Daniel had left. The perfect wedding she had spent years crafting had collapsed in a single night. The room was in chaos. Some guests rushed to leave while others stood transfixed, their faces filled with a mix of curiosity and fear. Whispers of the Morelli family's involvement in financial fraud and medical malpractice spread like wildfire. Margaret, my mother, desperately tried to keep her composure, but I could see her hands shaking as she clutched her expensive handbag, as if holding onto it tightly would somehow restore her world to what it once was. Don't listen to her, Margaret suddenly shrieked, her voice losing all control. She's always been jealous, always trying to destroy this family. I smiled, stepping closer to her, my voice soft but sharp. Is that so? Then why don't we call the IRS? Or maybe the hospital where Sophia supposedly works. I'm sure they'd love to hear about this. The truth was, they already knew. Just as I finished speaking, a loud ringing cut through the air. Richard, my father, hurriedly pulled his phone from his suit pocket. His face had already been tense, but as soon as he glanced at the screen, his expression completely drained of color. Morelli Family Care Clinic was calling. He rejected the call, but only seconds later another voice spoke up from the crowd. Dr. Collins, a well-known physician from the hospital, took a step forward. His voice was grave. Richard, The hospital is requesting your immediate presence. Dr. Collins' voice was firm as he looked at my father, his eyes filled with suspicion. They've just uncovered multiple forged prescriptions under Sophia's name. All of them are tied to your clinic. A new wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sophia immediately shook her head in panic. No, I didn't do anything. Someone must have forged my name, she screamed, her voice trembling. But no one believed her anymore. And then, right at that moment, the doors to the ballroom swung open. 2 police officers stepped inside. The entire room fell silent, holding its breath. I wasn't the one who called them, but I knew that once the truth was exposed, someone would act before I even had to. One of the officers stepped forward, his voice calm yet commanding. Richard Morelli, you need to come with us for questioning regarding allegations of financial fraud and insurance malpractice. I glanced at my father. For the first time in my life, I saw true fear in his eyes. This is a mistake, he tried to argue, but no one believed him anymore. Sophia burst into tears, rushing to grab his arm. Dad, do something. They can't take us away like this. Dad, I repeated, raising an eyebrow. Sophia, did you really think he was the only one involved in this? One of the officers turned to Sophia, then spoke. Miss Morelli, we will also need you to come in for questioning regarding the falsification of medical credentials. Sophia completely broke down. No, I didn't do anything, she screamed, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. But no one came to help her. Margaret turned to her daughter, then to her husband, as if desperately searching for someone to salvage the situation. But then, she realized it was over. Some guests quietly slipped out. Others pulled out their phones, recording the spectacle as it unfolded. The Morelli family's reputation, the legacy my mother had spent her life protecting, was crumbling before her very eyes. She turned back to me, her eyes filled with hatred. You destroyed this family. I let out a soft chuckle, my expression unshaken. No, Mother, I said evenly. You all destroyed yourselves a long time ago. I just made sure the world saw the truth. Richard lowered his head, saying nothing as the officers secured handcuffs around his wrists. Sophia continued sobbing, begging in vain. But no one cared anymore. And me? I just stood there, watching everything fall apart. Calm, proud, and with absolutely no regrets. Richard was escorted out of the ballroom in silence. The crowd parted to let the officers pass, but no one spoke up to defend him. His entire life he had been the one in control, the one making all the decisions. But in this moment, all the power he once held had vanished in a single night. Sophia knelt on the floor, her trembling hands clutching at her expensive wedding gown, now stained by the ruins of her own downfall. Once a perfect princess, she was now nothing more than a broken woman, exposed in front of everyone. She had no fiancé, no dignity, and most importantly, no one left to believe in her. Margaret, my mother, stood frozen. I could see it in her eyes. She wanted to do something, to say something that could turn the situation around, but for the first time in her life, she realized that she no longer had control over anything. I took a step forward, facing the man who once declared that I was unworthy of being part of this family. Richard lifted his head to look at me, his expression filled with resentment. You think you've won? His voice was hoarse, thick with anger. You're nothing but a traitor. I never considered you my daughter. The entire ballroom fell silent. Everyone was waiting for my reaction. But I simply stood there, calm and composed, as if I had been waiting for this moment my entire life. I leaned down slightly, looking him straight in the eye. Your family was lost a long time ago. You just never realized it. Not a hint of rage, not a trace of sorrow. I spoke the words as if they were nothing more than facts, and the truth was, they were. Richard opened his mouth to argue, but then he saw it. There was no one left on his side. He had destroyed everything with his own hands. Margaret clutched her designer handbag tightly, her face pale. She glanced around, as if searching for someone still loyal to the Morelli family, but everyone had turned their backs on them. The guests who once praised them, the colleagues who once respected them, now only wary stares and hushed whispers remained. Sophia let out a quiet sob. "Catherine, you can't do this to me." I turned to look at her. For the first time tonight, her voice was no longer sharp, no longer filled with mockery. Instead, it was drenched in desperation. "You did this to yourself, Sophia," I said softly but firmly. She collapsed further, unable to argue. I took a deep breath, feeling the crisp night air fill my lungs. I had done what I came here to do. A warm hand rested on my back. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Ethan, the man who had always stood by me, the one person whose loyalty I had never doubted. "Let's go, Catherine," he said gently, but I could hear the pride in his voice. I gave a slight nod. There was nothing left here for me. We walked out of the ballroom, passing curious stares and hushed murmurs, but no one dared to stop me. I was no longer the weak girl they had so easily cast aside. Outside, the cool evening air wrapped around me like a soft embrace. I exhaled slowly, feeling as if I had just set down a weight I had carried for over a decade. Ethan opened the car door for me, but before stepping in, I realized there was one more thing I wanted to do before this night ended. I turned to him, my eyes gleaming with a spontaneous idea. "Ethan, do you want to get some cake?" He blinked, momentarily surprised by my question, but then a smile quickly spread across his face. "Cake?" He chuckled. "Absolutely. We have something to celebrate, after all." I laughed, feeling a lightness spread through me, not because I had sought revenge, but because I had truly freed myself. We drove to a small bakery on the corner of the street, its warm golden light spilling through the windows. I ordered a slice of red velvet cake, while Ethan got a piece of cheesecake. I picked up my fork, cutting into the cake and taking a bite. The sweetness melted on my tongue instantly, but the best part was knowing that I could finally enjoy it, without any burden weighing on me. Ethan watched me, his gaze filled with warmth. "How do you feel now?" he asked. I took a sip of my tea, letting its slight bitterness linger for a moment. Then I set my cup down and smiled. Free. That was my real victory. Not the downfall of the Morelli family, not the exposure of their secrets, but the fact that, at last, I was no longer bound by my past. Catherine's story is not just about reclaiming justice. It's a powerful lesson on freedom and self-worth. Sometimes the people we love most are the ones who turn their backs on us first. But what truly matters is not how we are abandoned, but how we rise again. Catherine never sought revenge. She only demanded fairness and proved that a person's worth is not defined by those who discard them, but by how they rebuild their own life. And that is the true victory. What do you think of Catherine's story? If you were in her situation, how would you have faced it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to follow the channel for more inspiring stories about life and family. I'm 27 years old, living in a small town in Maine. Since I was a child, I've always lived in the shadow of my older sister, Ava. Ava is 3 years older than me and has long been considered the golden child of the family. In my parents' eyes, she's the perfect role model. Beautiful, accomplished, and always the one who knows how to make people admire her. And me, Caroline, the dull little sister who was always compared and never quite good enough. The relationship between Ava and me has never been smooth. When I was a kid, Ava was always the one soaking up all the attention. If I got an A on a test, Ava would show up with an honor roll certificate. If I asked to hang out with friends, Ava would go out with her boyfriend, and my parents would forget all about me. Ava was the center of our family's universe, and I was just a satellite orbiting around her. But things started to get worse when Ava married Lucas. Lucas was a successful man, 4 years older than Ava, and he made it clear from the beginning that he didn't want kids. He said this up front when they started dating, but Ava convinced herself she could change his mind after they got married. She kept telling herself that Lucas was just saying that, and that he'd come around eventually. They got married in a lavish ceremony where I was asked to be a bridesmaid but was forgotten amidst the endless congratulations for the bride and groom. Ava beamed in her white wedding gown, laughing like her life was a fairy tale. I stood beside her, holding a bouquet and forcing a smile. 3 years later, Ava's marriage began to crumble. Lucas remained firm on his stance that he didn't want children, and that became the source of endless arguments. Ava, who desperately wanted to be a mother, started to unravel when she realized Lucas had no intention of changing. She said to me one night as we sat on the porch, "Lucas is selfish. He only thinks about himself. He doesn't understand what it's like for a woman who yearns to hold a child in her arms." I just sat there, not knowing what to say. The truth was, Ava had known all along that Lucas didn't want kids. But Ava always believed she could change everything, from her husband's wishes to the entire family's perspective. And when that didn't work, she started blaming everyone around her. One morning, I got a call from Mom. Her voice was filled with frustration. "Do you know what's going on with Ava? Lucas has filed for divorce." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Ava always put herself in these dramatic situations of her own making. She wanted a child at all costs, but Lucas refused, and now the entire family was blaming Lucas for not giving Ava what she wanted. Mom wouldn't stop complaining. "Ava is falling apart. Her whole world is collapsing. You need to be there for your sister right now." I sighed, feeling the weight of it pressing down on my chest. Why did I always have to clean up Ava's messes? Why did I have to take responsibility for decisions she made herself? After I hung up, I looked in the mirror. My tired eyes stared back at me, and my dry lips were pressed into a thin line. I couldn't help but ask myself, this time, do I really have the strength to be Ava's lifeline again? When I announced that Nathan and I would be getting married in September, Ava's first reaction wasn't to congratulate me. Instead, she raised an eyebrow, her lips pressed tight, and looked at me as if I had just stabbed her in the back. "Really? September?" Ava sneered, but her eyes were as cold as ice. "You know, that's the month Lucas and I officially got divorced. How wonderful you chose the very month when I lost everything to celebrate your happiness." I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. "Ava, I planned this before I knew about your divorce. It wasn't intentional." "Not intentional." Ava cut me off, her voice sharp and accusing. "You're always intentional, Caroline. Your whole life, you've tried to outshine me. You've always wanted to prove you're better than me." Her words pierced through me like a knife. Ava stood up, storming off, leaving me drowning in a wave of guilt I didn't deserve. A few weeks later, I got a message from a distant relative. "Caroline, did you really ruin Ava's marriage? Did you really convince Lucas to leave her so you could take everything?" My heart clenched. I had no idea what they were talking about. I never interfered in Ava and Lucas's marriage. We weren't even close enough for me to have any influence over Lucas's decisions. But the rumors kept spreading. Ava had told the family and relatives that I was the one who destroyed her marriage. According to her, I had secretly met with Lucas, confiding in him about how much I wanted to have children before she did. She even fabricated a story that I mocked her for not being able to keep her husband, claiming that I whispered things to Lucas that made him so miserable that he decided to leave her. One afternoon, while I was trying on wedding dresses at a boutique, Mom walked in, her eyes red and puffy. "What did you do, Caroline? Did you really interfere in your sister's marriage?" I turned around to face her, shocked. "Mom, I didn't do anything." I never talked to Lucas about their marriage. I avoided mentioning the divorce entirely because I didn't want Ava to think I was mocking her. Mom sighed, her hands trembling as she placed them on my shoulders. "Ava said you texted Lucas encouraging him to leave her so he could be free. She said you bragged about how you'd be married and have kids before she ever could. Caroline, how could you do such a thing?" I felt the ground beneath me give way. Ava hadn't just lied. She was actively trying to paint me as the villain. Mom, I never texted Lucas. I don't even have his number. I've always tried to stay out of that divorce. I don't understand why Ava is lying like this. Mom closed her eyes, letting out a heavy sigh, as if trying to keep herself from breaking down. Ava is hurting, Caroline. You have to understand. She's lost everything. She has no one left. You need to have compassion for your sister. Compassion? I was supposed to have compassion for Ava while she was turning me into the villain in front of the whole family? Why did everyone always demand that I understand Ava? That I should be the one to sacrifice and step aside? I decided to confront Ava. I drove to her apartment, where the same flimsy curtains I once helped her pick out still hung in the windows. The door opened, and there stood Ava, her eyes red and swollen. What are you doing, Ava? You're telling everyone that I ruined your marriage? Do you really think I would do that? Ava crossed her arms over her chest, her lips curving into a bitter smirk. You didn't do anything. Then why did Lucas leave me, right when you started planning your wedding? Why did he say he wanted freedom, a fresh start, right when you and Nathan announced your wedding? You're imagining things, Ava. I didn't say anything to Lucas. I'm not the reason he left you. Oh, really? You've always been jealous of me. Your whole life you wanted what I had. And now you have it all. The wedding, the love, the happiness. And I've lost everything. You're lying to yourself, Ava. Lucas left because he didn't want kids. You knew that before you married him. Don't blame me for your bad decisions. Ava let out a cold laugh, her eyes icy. You'll pay for this, Caroline. You'll see everything you have slip away just like I did. I turned away, feeling like each step I took was crushing the remnants of a sisterhood that once existed. I knew this battle had just begun. Ava wasn't just trying to ruin my wedding. She wanted to destroy my entire life. One June afternoon, while I was going over the guest list with Nathan, my phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. Caroline, we need to talk. Mom's voice was cold and stern. Can you put everything on hold? I frowned. Put what on hold? The wedding. I think you should postpone it, Mom said, each word like a knife stabbing into my heart. I stood there, frozen. Postpone the wedding? Why? For Ava, Mom said quickly. She's falling apart. She just lost her husband, and now her little sister is throwing a wedding. It's like rubbing salt in her wound. Have you thought about how Ava feels, Caroline? I bit my lip, feeling a numbness spreading through my body. Mom, I planned this wedding before Ava got divorced. I can't just postpone it because she couldn't keep her husband. Don't say such cruel things, Mom snapped. Ava is in pain. She's been through so much. Can't you wait a few months until things settle down? Mom? I closed my eyes, trying to keep the anger from boiling over. Nathan and I have already put down deposits, sent out invitations, everything is ready. I can't just cancel it because Ava doesn't want to see her sister happy. You're so selfish, Caroline, Mom sighed. This family raised you, loved you, and now, when your sister needs you the most, you're only thinking of yourself. I stayed silent, every word caught in my throat. In that moment, I realized I would never win against Ava, no matter how wrong she was, no matter how much she lied, no matter how much she destroyed. She would always be Mom's favorite. The call ended in cold, bitter silence. I put the phone down and looked at Nathan, who was sitting beside me, his eyes full of concern. Are you okay? He asked, his dark eyes searching mine as if he could pull me out of this pit of despair. I'm fine, I said, but inside, I was shattering piece by piece. In the days that followed, I tried to reach out to Mom, to Dad, even to Ava, but no one answered. Every call fell into a void of silence. Until one afternoon, when I came home to find an envelope sitting on the table. The sender's name was Mom. Inside was a handwritten letter. Her shaky handwriting slanted as if she had written it in a state of distress. Caroline, I've thought long and hard. Dad and I have decided not to attend your wedding. Not because we don't love you, but because we can't stand to see Ava hurt and falling apart any further. You know she's lost everything. And you? You're living the life she always dreamed of. I hope you understand. Don't hold it against me. Mom. The trembling words cut through me like a knife. My heart pounded in my chest. My parents, the very people who should have been standing beside me on the happiest day of my life, had chosen not to come. All because of Ava. The wedding day approached, each hour dragging by like sand falling through a heavy, suffocating hourglass. I forced myself to keep it together, to stay strong for Nathan and for the friends who had shown up. But inside I was crumbling. When the wedding day finally arrived, I slipped into my white gown, the delicate lace hugging my body. My face was perfectly made up, but my eyes were empty. As I walked into the reception hall, the chandeliers cast a soft glow over the beautifully decorated tables. Nathan's friends filled one side of the room, his family seated with smiles and warm embraces. But on my side, only a few distant relatives showed up. The rows of empty chairs stood like silent witnesses to my parents' absence. I forced a smile as I walked down the aisle, my hand gripping Nathan's tightly. He looked at me, his eyes full of love, but all I could feel was the emptiness swelling inside my chest. When the officiant asked, "Who will give this bride away to the groom?" Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. I looked around, searching for my parents' faces, but all I saw were empty chairs, unfamiliar eyes, and forced, polite smiles. Nathan squeezed my hand, then nodded to his best friend, Jordan. Jordan stepped forward, placed his hand on my shoulder, and said loudly, "I will stand for Caroline." A single tear slid down my cheek, soaking into the pristine white fabric of my gown. In that moment, I realized that family isn't always about blood. Family is about the ones who stay, not the ones who walk away when you need them most. 3 years after the wedding, life with Nathan has finally found its rhythm. We moved to a small but cozy house in the suburbs of Seattle. Every morning, I wake up to the sound of birds outside the window and sunlight streaming through the curtains, a kind of peace I never had when I lived close to my family. My relationship with Mom, Dad, and Ava completely disintegrated after the wedding. I no longer speak to them. The occasional check-in calls gradually stopped and eventually disappeared. Instead, I focused on building a new life, a new family, and a new sense of self. Nathan remains my steadfast rock. He never brings up my family, never asks if I want to reconnect. He just listens as I recount the pain of being abandoned on my wedding day and holds my hand tight whenever I can't hold back the tears. And then, the good news came. I found out I was pregnant after months of waiting. Nathan lifted me up and spun me around the living room. He kissed my forehead, his eyes shining as if he had just received the most precious gift in the world. "From now on, our family will have a little angel," he whispered, his voice filled with love. I decided to share the news on social media. A simple photo, Nathan and I holding the ultrasound picture, our smiles unable to hide our happiness. I didn't think Ava and my parents would see it. I had blocked them long ago and moved to another city. But less than an hour after posting, my phone rang. The name flashing on the screen stunned me. "Mom?" I stood still, my hands shaking. Nathan looked at me, concerned. "Do you want to answer?" I shook my head, but the phone kept ringing. Finally, I sighed and pressed the answer button. "Caroline?" Mom's voice came through, emotional but still cold. "I saw your post. You're pregnant, aren't you?" I tried to keep my voice calm. "Yes." "Oh my God, Caroline! That's wonderful news. I'm so happy for you, Mom said, but I could hear the tension in her voice. Thank you, I replied shortly, hoping to end the call as quickly as possible. But Mom wasn't going to let me off that easily. You know, Ava has been trying to have a baby for 3 years. Mom continued, her voice slow as if she were choosing every word carefully. But the doctor just confirmed that she can't have children. You have no idea how devastated she is. I closed my eyes. Why should I care? Ava had ruined my wedding, turned me into a villain in the eyes of the whole family. Why should I be concerned about her now? Caroline, Mom said, her voice suddenly soft, almost pleading. She's in so much pain. Have you thought about letting Ava be part of your baby's life? Like a second mother, maybe. It would help her feel like she still has a family. My eyes shot open, unable to believe what I'd just heard. What do you mean? You and Ava are still sisters. This baby is Ava's niece or nephew too. She needs to feel like she still has a role in this family. Let her be involved. Help with the baby. It would make her feel less alone. I can't believe this, I said, my voice trembling. You're asking me to share my child with the woman who tried to destroy my life just because she can't have one of her own? Mom sighed. Caroline, don't be selfish. Ava has lost everything. At least you still have your husband, your family. You can't just leave your sister out in the cold like this. I've been left out in the cold my entire life, I snapped. Do you remember my wedding day? Do you remember how you and Dad abandoned me just because Ava felt hurt? Do you remember how she spread rumors that I ruined her marriage? And now you want me to let Ava play second mother to my child? No way! Caroline, you don't understand what Ava has been through. No, Mom. You don't understand. I've been through enough. From now on, I won't let anyone, not even Ava, interfere in my life again. I hung up, my hands shaking. Nathan came over and wrapped his arms around me. You did the right thing, he whispered. You don't owe them anything. I nodded, but my heart was pounding. I had said what I needed to say, but I knew Ava and Mom wouldn't let it go that easily. 3 months after the tense phone call with Mom, Nathan and I decided to go out for lunch at a small cafe near our home. We were enjoying the peaceful moments, his hand gently resting on my belly, as a reminder of the little angel growing inside me. Do you want anything else to eat? Nathan asked, his warm smile making me feel safe. As long as you're here, I have everything I need, I said, leaning my head against his shoulder, feeling more secure than ever. At that moment, a familiar voice called out from behind. Caroline? Is that really you? I turned around and froze. Mark, Ava's ex-husband, was standing in front of me. He looked different, his hair shorter, his appearance more rugged and worn out. Mark, I said awkwardly. It's been a while. Nathan reached out his hand to shake Mark's, his eyes cautious. Hey there. Mark nodded, forcing a smile. Mind if I sit down? I glanced at Nathan, who gave a slight nod. Mark pulled out a chair and sat down, his eyes holding a hint of sadness. I heard you're pregnant, Mark said, his tone gentle, but with an edge of something deeper. Yes, I answered, keeping my tone neutral. And you? How have you been? Mark let out a bitter laugh, his eyes darkening. Ava is still telling everyone that I left her because I didn't want kids, isn't she? I stiffened. What do you mean? Mark picked up his coffee cup, swirling it around in his hand. She's still going around telling everyone that I walked out on her because I refused to have a baby, right? I nodded. That's what Ava said. Everyone believes that you rejected her, and that's why she fell apart. Mark let out a hollow laugh. I've kept my mouth shut for 3 years, thinking it was the best way to protect Ava's reputation. But now I realize she's been using me, turning me into the villain all this time. Nathan frowned. What are you talking about, Mark? Mark placed the cup back on the table, his eyes burning with a fire that threatened to expose every lie. The truth is, Ava stopped taking her birth control without telling me. She tried to trap me with a baby to force me to stay. My heart pounded in my chest. I stared at Mark, unable to believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? Ava actually did that? Mark nodded, a bitter smile playing on his lips. She admitted it during a fight. She said that if I wouldn't agree to have a child, she'd make the decision herself. Ava had been off birth control for 6 months, hoping to get pregnant without my knowledge. Nathan tightened his grip on my hand. And then what happened? Then I found out the truth, Mark said, his voice shaking. One day, I saw her birth control prescription in the trash. I knew it wasn't a new prescription. She had stopped taking it long ago and kept it a secret. When I confronted her, Ava didn't even apologize. She laughed, called me a coward, and said I was too scared to be a father. Mark took a deep breath, his jaw clenched. That's when I decided to file for divorce. Not because I didn't want kids, but because I couldn't stay with a woman who would lie and manipulate me, using a child that didn't even exist. I sat there, stunned, every word Mark said cutting deeper into my mind. Ava never said any of this, I murmured, a chill running down my spine. She always told everyone that you left her because you didn't want kids. Mark let out a dry, bitter laugh. She didn't want people to know she was the one who tried to manipulate me. So she made me the bad guy, the man who refused to be a father and abandoned her in her time of need. Nathan shook his head, his eyes filled with anger. She's been manipulating everyone, including Caroline's family. Exactly, Mark nodded. Ava is an expert at turning a story into a drama where she's always the victim. And I let her keep playing that role for 3 years. I felt like I was sinking into a dark abyss. Everything was starting to make sense. Ava hadn't just ruined her own marriage. She had deliberately manipulated everyone to turn me into the villain. Ava once told me that I was the reason you left her, I said, my voice shaking. She told everyone that I seduced you and made you change your mind. Mark frowned. That's a blatant lie, Caroline. I never thought of you that way. We never even had a deep conversation. She's just trying to blame someone else instead of facing the truth about herself. Nathan turned to me, his eyes full of concern. Do you know what this means, Caroline? I took a deep breath, feeling the coldness spread through my body. Ava hadn't just ruined my wedding. She had carefully constructed a web of lies to cover up the fact that she was the real betrayer in her own marriage. A week after the shocking conversation with Mark, I still couldn't shake the storm of thoughts swirling in my head. His words kept replaying like a broken record. Ava deliberately stopped taking her birth control to trap her husband. She created a tragic story to make everyone feel sorry for her, while I was painted as the ruthless sister who destroyed her life. Nathan tried to reassure me, but I knew the storm was far from over. And I was right. One morning, as I was sitting at the dining table, my phone rang. It was Linda. Hi, Caroline. Her voice was gentle, but there was a strange undertone. I just wanted to check in and see if you're okay. Of course, Mom, I said, frowning. Why? Did something happen? Well, Linda hesitated. This morning, I received a message from Ava. She said you blocked her number and refused to talk to the family. She's worried about you and said you're very stressed and might not be healthy enough to take care of the baby. It felt like a bucket of ice water had been dumped over my head. Ava said that? She also sent me a long text about what happened in her marriage to Mark. Linda continued, her voice calm but laced with suspicion. She said that Mark cheated on her and that you sided with him instead of your own sister. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms until it hurt. Mom, that's a complete lie. Mark didn't cheat on Ava. Ava stopped taking her birth control without telling him. Linda was silent for a long moment. Then she sighed. I believe you, Caroline. But Ava is spreading very different stories. And she's not just reaching out to me. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? She contacted your landlord, Linda said. Ava pretended to be your sister and told her that you're having serious psychological issues and might not be able to keep up with the rent payments. She claimed you're mismanaging Nathan's money and might need a guardian. My breath caught in my throat. Was Ava really trying to make me look like someone unstable? Untrustworthy and incapable of taking care of myself? As soon as I hung up the call, a message from my landlord popped up on the screen. Caroline, I just got a call from Ava. She said you're having financial problems and might not be able to pay rent. I just wanted to confirm with you. Is everything okay? I threw the phone onto the table, my heart pounding. Ava was deliberately trying to destroy everything I had built. She wanted to turn me into a mentally unstable, unreliable mess who couldn't handle her own life. Nathan, I called out. He rushed into the room, his eyes filled with worry. Ava contacted the landlord and your mom. She's telling them that I'm losing control, that I'm unstable, and can't take care of the baby. Nathan came over and gripped my shoulders firmly. You won't let her destroy you again. I'm calling my mom and the landlord right now. That's not all, I said, my voice trembling. Ava also told your mom that Mark cheated on her and that I sided with him. She's trying to make me look like the reason her marriage fell apart. Nathan clenched his jaw. She won't stop until you lose everything. You have to do something, Caroline. You can't stay silent anymore. Nathan pulled out his phone and immediately called Linda to set the record straight. He explained everything. What Mark had revealed, Ava's lies, and how she was trying to ruin my reputation. While Nathan was talking, I sank down onto the chair, exhaustion washing over me. Ever since I got pregnant, I'd been trying to avoid stress for the baby's sake. But now, Ava was dragging me into her chaos, determined to pull me down with her. After Nathan hung up, he turned back to me, his expression serious. My mom believes you. But you need to act fast. If Ava is pretending to be you and contacting the landlord, who knows what else she might try? You need to protect yourself and the baby. I took a deep breath. Nathan was right. Ava had crossed every line, and I couldn't stay silent any longer. I'm contacting a lawyer, I said firmly. I'm sending a legal warning to Ava and my parents. If they keep interfering in my life, I won't hesitate to take legal action for harassment and defamation. Nathan squeezed my hand. I'm with you every step of the way, Caroline. You're not alone. I leaned my head against his shoulder, my eyes closed, but my mind was still spinning. Ava was determined to make me the villain in everyone's eyes. But this time, I wouldn't let her win. Not anymore. A week after Ava contacted my landlord and mother-in-law, I decided I couldn't stay silent anymore. I went to meet with a lawyer who helped Nathan and me draft a formal cease and desist letter. I sat in the lawyer's office, my hands gripping the edge of the chair so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Beside me, Nathan held my hand, his eyes firm and resolute. Caroline, the lawyer said, sliding the letter across the desk. We've covered all the bases. This letter will demand that Ava and your parents cease all harassment immediately. If they continue to contact you, your landlord, your in-laws, or anyone else, we will proceed with stronger legal action. I nodded, signing my name on the letter without hesitation. This was the first time in my life that I was standing up to Ava and my parents. I had allowed them to manipulate me for far too long. But now, I wasn't just protecting myself, I was protecting my unborn child. After sending the warning letter, I decided to change my phone number. I also informed the landlord and everyone around me that if anyone claiming to be Ava or my parents tried to contact them, they were to notify me or the lawyer immediately. I wasn't giving them any more chances to meddle in my life. Nathan also installed a security camera system around the house. We set up a monitoring app on our phones to ensure that no one could approach without being seen. The sense of safety slowly started to return, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that Ava wasn't done yet. One evening, as I lay on the sofa, my hand gently rubbing my belly, Nathan walked into the living room. He handed me a glass of fresh orange juice and sat down beside me. "Are you feeling any better?" he asked, his eyes filled with concern. I let out a deep sigh. I still feel like there's a heavy weight on my chest. I don't understand why Ava hates me this much. She had everything. Our parents' love, everyone's attention, but she still can't stop attacking me. Nathan gently squeezed my hand. You know, Ava was never satisfied with what she had. She always wanted more, even if it meant stepping on others to get it. But this time, you did the right thing. You stood up for yourself. Tears welled up in my eyes. But she's still my sister. I once loved her so much. I once wanted to share everything with her, the good and the bad. But now she feels like a complete stranger. Nathan pulled me into his arms. You've done everything you could. Now it's time for you to focus on your real family. Me, and our soon-to-arrive baby. I closed my eyes, listening to Nathan's steady heartbeat. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my own life. No more threatening calls from Ava, no more accusations from my parents. The next day, I received a message from the lawyer. Ava had responded to the cease and desist letter. The content was brief. Ava has received the letter and stated she will not contact you again. I put the phone down and leaned back in the chair, feeling as though I had finally awakened from a long, haunting nightmare. In the days that followed, my life started to regain some sense of normalcy. Nathan took me to my prenatal checkup, and the doctor confirmed everything was fine. I was carrying a baby boy. When I heard the steady heartbeat echoing through the ultrasound monitor, I broke down in tears. This child would never have to live under the manipulation and resentment that I once did. Nathan held my hand, his eyes brimming with tears too. You've done so well, Caroline. From now on, it's just peace and happiness. I smiled, looking down at my growing belly. Sweetheart, I promise to protect you at all costs. You will never have to endure what I did. That evening, as Nathan and I lay in bed, I felt gentle kicks from my belly. The baby was moving, reminding me that I had fought through every storm to keep him safe. Nathan stroked my hair, his voice soft against my ear. Do you have any regrets? I looked up at the ceiling, the memories flashing through my mind, the tear-filled wedding day, Ava's baseless accusations, and my parents' relentless efforts to force me to sacrifice for my sister. No, I said firmly. I don't regret a thing. Because in the end, I found myself again. And I found my real family. Nathan kissed my forehead gently. I'm so proud of you, Caroline. Outside the window, the Seattle sky was dotted with glittering stars. I closed my eyes, listening to the wind whispering against the glass. Ava and my parents were no longer a part of my life, but that no longer mattered. I had Nathan. I had our soon-to-arrive baby. And most importantly, I had myself. A woman who had learned to stand up and protect herself, no longer suffocated by manipulation and lies. That was the true freedom. Caroline's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes our own family can be the source of our deepest wounds and heartbreaks. Betrayed by her sister and parents, she was forced to choose between continuing to endure their toxicity or standing up to protect herself and her new family. With courage and determination, Caroline cut all ties with those who sought to manipulate and destroy her. She learned to set firm boundaries, protect her peace, and prepare to welcome her child into a safe and loving environment. What do you think about Caroline's decision to cut ties with her family to protect her own happiness? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional family stories.